Hi, and welcome to this Google Workspace admin tutorial brought to you by Acer and Apps Events. I'm Charlie Love, and in this video, we're going to look at organizational units in the Google Workspace admin console and how to get your setup right for your organization. OUs are used to group collections of users together and to apply policies to those users. If you have the wrong OU structure, it can create hours of additional management and make monitoring and managing Google Workspace far more complex than it needs to be. Well-structured OUs focus on your use cases and then break down into groups of users within those use cases. You should always structure your OUs so the largest group of users you will be making changes for is at the highest possible level in your hierarchy. Typically, this means staff and students in an education context. I always also have a separate OU for super admin accounts to keep these users isolated from general users. Remember, you should never use a super admin account for daily functions. A super admin account should not be your general use account. You might hear some admins say that there is no need to use a separate OU for devices and that you can place devices in the same OUs as users. I'm not a fan of this approach, and I've found that it can lead to problems in the future. I always recommend having a specific devices OU at the top level of your OU structure, and to use this as a container for all your devices, and to then segment your devices based on their various use cases. Remember, apps follow users rather than devices in Google Workspace. An OU for a small business or school should be based on your use cases. In this example, we have just 4 OUs at the top level: devices, students, staff, and admins. This means that I can set policies for all students, all devices, or staff from the top level. I can then segment these collections of OUs or devices further based on my various uses. In this example, my second level of OUs looks at roles. My students are organized by year. I use the year of entry to education, others use the year of graduation. Doesn't matter as long as you're consistent with the scheme that you apply. I've split staff by role as teachers and support staff. There's a third level within my devices OU where I can divide my Chrome devices into those that are deployed for one-to-one deployments and those that are just generally available within classrooms. I've also got OUs for support staff and teacher devices. With this approach, policies can be applied at the highest level in most cases, which with greater granularity as you move down the OU hierarchy. Let's have a look at a possible OU structure for a multi-stage school with primary and secondary students. This is the kind of deployment you might find in an international school or other all-through school setting. Here I've broken down devices into devices and Chrome OS, and we still have students, staff, and admins. So admins can set policies specific for primary or secondary school based on the initial use case. I've then got OUs for primary and secondary. This means I can set policies for primary staff separately from secondary staff if I wish. Or I can assign policies for primary school students rather than all students. This approach gives the most flexibility for admins and makes managing your Google Workspace deployment less complex. If you manage a multi-academy trust on multiple schools from one Google Workspace deployment, the first thing you're likely to do when you're setting up your OUs is to set up the different sites at the top level. You'll set up each school and then the students and the staff below that. Don't do it. That approach makes things far more complex. The policies that you deploy are very likely to be age and staff specific. Having establishment-based OUs at the top level means you need to manage policies separately for each school, which is just far too complicated. The best setup, again, is to think about your use cases and have these at the top level. It took me years to work out the best structure for complex multi-site and multi-school deployments, and this is what I use now. Again, use cases at the top level, then the level or type of establishment, then the establishments, and then those role-based OUs within those establishments. Policies here can be applied to all students, all primary students, all students in a specific school, and so on. This brings granularity and simplicity to the management of multiple sites. So after that, you might be thinking that you need to change your OU structure. Here are some tips for how to do that. Build your new OU structure separately in your domain. Don't just start hacking away and moving users. Keep your existing structure and create your new one beside it. If you have specific policies already applied to OUs that you want to use, visually compare policies in the existing OUs to the ones that you're setting up. Where you have a particularly complex OU structure, you can use GAM to create the OUs for you. When ready, move a few users for testing purposes. Move some of your existing users to the new OU structure and gather any feedback. It might be all good, or the feedback might indicate where you have policies that you need to modify. Use GAM to bulk move users to your new structure. GAM can be used to export your users to CSV files. These files include the current OU path for the user. I load these into Google Sheets, update for the new path, and then use the modified CSV as an input for GAM, allowing me to move thousands of users with just one command. Move your empty OUs to an archive OU and keep these for reference. If there are policies applied that you might need to refer to, it can be useful to hold on to these OUs for a short period of time. Again, you can use GAM to move your OUs in bulk. I hope you've enjoyed these tips on setting up your OUs in Google Workspace. If you need support for your Google Workspace admin, don't hesitate to reach out to the Apps Events team. I'm Charlie Love, and this video has been brought to you by Apps Events and Acer. Please leave any comments or suggestions for what you would like to see in future videos in the comments here. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.